Even without Caitlin Clark, Indiana Fever make postseason for second straight season. No Caitlin Clark, no problem. 4 days after Clark announced her season was over with a right groin injury, the Indiana Fever clinched the 7th playoff spot for the WNBA postseason, which opened Sunday, September 14th. The Fever beat the Washington Mystics, 94-65, to make the playoffs for the second consecutive season despite myriad setbacks. The Fever lost 5 players for the season with injuries including Clark. Guards Sydney Colson, knee, Ari McDonald, foot, Sophie Cunningham, knee, and forward Chloe Bibby, knee, are also out. In their absence, the Fever have used 9 different starting lineups and 17 players to put together a 23-20 record. Natasha Howard led 5 players in double figures by scoring 17 on Sunday, September 7th. Ariel Powers added 15 points, Shea Petty 13 and Kelsey Mitchell 10. Alia Boston had a double-double with 12 points and 11 rebounds. Indiana's seeding isn't finalized. The Fever could move to 6th if they beat the number 1 seeded Minnesota Lynx on Tuesday and the Golden State Valkyries lose their last 2 games. Indiana's opponent is also up in the air as seeding on the top and bottom half of the league will be figured out in the final few games of the regular season, which wraps up Thursday, September 11th. The moment the 2025 WNBA season tipped off, the narrative surrounding the Indiana Fever seemed pre-written by pundits and fans alike. No Caitlin Clark, no chance. How could a team built around the most electrifying rookie in league history manage to sustain momentum if their superstar was sidelined? Clark's absence, whether due to injury, rest, or other circumstances, was expected to derail the Fever's postseason aspirations. But basketball has always had a funny way of rewriting its own scripts. Against the backdrop of doubt, the Fever found not only resilience but an identity that ran deeper than one name. Now, for the second straight season, Indiana is postseason bound, and they've done it by proving that while Caitlin Clark may be a phenomenon, she is not the only reason the Fever matter. The spark of belief. It started with a promise made in the locker room before the season began. Veterans like Kelsey Mitchell and Nalissa Smith gathered the team and spoke with conviction. "We aren't just Caitlin's team. We're the Indiana Fever." Those words became more than a rallying cry. They became the standard. The Fever knew the outside world was ready to reduce them to one-player dependency, but inside the huddle, the vision was broader. Coach Christie Sides restructured rotations, emphasized collective ball movement, and challenged every player to lean into their strengths. The result? A team that rediscovered grit. Mitchell's leadership. If Clark's absence was the headline, Kelsey Mitchell's resurgence became the story. Often overlooked in the national spotlight, Mitchell became Indiana's North Star, guiding the offense with composure and sharp shooting. Night after night, she delivered clutch performances, scoring when needed, creating for others when defenses collapsed, and emerging as the team's emotional anchor. Mitchell had always been a steady scorer, but this season demanded something more: leadership. She embraced the responsibility, turning into the veteran voice that every young roster needs. For a team finding its way without its brightest star, Mitchell's consistency was oxygen. Nalissa Smith's breakout. If Mitchell provided the voice, Nalissa Smith supplied the muscle. Long heralded as a player with untapped potential, Smith took full advantage of her expanded role. Her inside presence grew into dominance as she controlled the boards, punished mismatches in the paint, and developed a mid-range game that left defenders guessing. Fans who once wondered if Smith could become a cornerstone found their answer. She wasn't just filling a gap, she was defining her own era. Game after game, Smith's double-double set the tone for Indiana's toughness. The bench that breathed fire. Postseason teams aren't built on stars alone, and the Fever's bench knew it. Christy Wallace, Grace Berger, and Alia Boston, when shifting in and out of rotations, offered bursts of energy that often swung momentum. Boston, in particular, became a defensive nightmare for opponents. Without Clark dominating the narrative, her brilliance in the post became impossible to ignore. Whether swatting shots or anchoring the defense, Boston made it clear that Indiana's foundation wasn't fragile, it was fortified. And then there was Grace Berger, the unassuming guard who became a quiet storm. Her poise off the bench stabilized Indiana's second unit, giving them a balance that many opponents lacked. A culture built on more than one. What made this postseason berth feel different wasn't just the wins, it was the how. The Fever weren't racing to outscore teams with one superstar lighting up the scoreboard. Instead, they built their victories on collective defense, scrappy rebounding, and an offense that flowed through multiple hands. Each game felt like proof that the Fever were not a one-note symphony but a full orchestra learning to play in harmony. The doubters and the noise. Of course, the noise never stopped. National media still clung to Clark's magnetism, often framing Indiana's victories with backhanded compliments. Imagine what they could do if Caitlin were healthy. But inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse, fans knew better. They weren't imagining what could have been, they were celebrating what was. The Fever had reclaimed pride, not as Clark's supporting cast, but as a unit worthy of postseason basketball on its own merits. A postseason that feels different. Last year's postseason appearance, with Clark in tow, felt like a renaissance, the return of a franchise that had long been dormant. But this year's playoff qualification? It feels like validation. It proves that Indiana isn't a flash in the pan or a team dependent on one transcendent player. It shows that the Fever are building something sustainable, a culture that can weather storms and keep rising. And when Clark returns, the narrative will shift again. But this time, it will be richer, fuller, and truer. She won't be carrying the Fever, she'll be joining a team that has already proven it knows how to fight. Why it matters? For Indiana, making the postseason without Caitlin Clark isn't just about another shot at a title run. It's about respect. It's about silencing the doubters who claimed they couldn't stand without her. It's about showing young fans that heroes come in many forms, from Mitchell's leadership to Smith's power, from Boston's defense to Berger's poise. It's about reminding everyone that basketball has always been a team sport. The legacy being written. Years from now, when historians look back at the Fever's journey, they'll see two back-to-back postseason runs that laid the foundation for something special. Clark may be the headline, but the story is richer. A franchise reborn, a culture rebuilt, a team that refused to let absence define them. Indiana Fever basketball is back. And this time, it's here to stay.